Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and a depression survivor. Welcome to your Depression Recovery channel, where each week we talk about practical tools and coping strategies for healing from depression and anxiety. This week I wanted to continue my Back to the Brink series. I call it Back to the Brink, where I interview people who have survived depression and anxiety and are here to tell us how they did it and how they're staying in recovery and maintaining their recovery. This week I have a very special guest who's been in my support group for 6 months. Her name is Heather. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Doug.
It's great to have you here. So let's start, how I start with everybody. What's your official diagnosis, or what type of condition do you have?
Okay, well, my official diagnosis was initially clinical depression with generalized anxiety disorder. And then more recently, actually, as of the past few months, it's been changed to bipolar type 2 with anxiety.
Right. Okay, and bipolar is ups and downs, but the ups are mild, but the downs are pretty bad.
Right, because it's
Right.
bipolar 2, the ups are a little more mild than they
Right.
would be. Yeah.
And are there other people in your family who have also suffered from mental health disorders like anxiety, like depression?
Yeah, actually there are. I have an uncle with bipolar disorder. I believe my father has undiagnosed clinical depression, and also several uncles on my mom's side who have all been through some mental health struggles of their own.
It's typical because, alcoholism, like cancer, depression, and anxiety tend to run in families.
Mm-hmm.
So when was the first time that you actually became aware that you were suffering from depression? When was the first quote-unquote episode, and was there a trigger?
Yeah, there was actually a trigger for me. When I was 14, my oldest brother died in an accident, and of course that was the freshman year of high school, and at the time I was being homeschooled, and it was in kind of a rural area, so I was pretty isolated throughout high school. And over time, I think that grief turned into depression during those first few years.
Weren't you also not in a regular school? You were homeschooled at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you didn't actually have the community to go to.
Exactly.
And one of my big things is that, lack of connection to community actually, exacerbates and makes worse depression. So you had a big loss, you were not around your peers, you were fairly isolated in a rural community, you just had yourself, and it was too much.
Yeah, definitely. And, also having the rest of the family grieving, it really made things more intense.
There's also adolescence, which is also a difficult time.
Which is intense
when
all
people
on its
tend
own.
to feel like they're going crazy anyway, right?
Yeah.
So all that together.
All of that together, yeah.
And yet you did find some help. You did find, wasn't there some medication at the time, or a counselor you saw? Or what type, during your high school years when you were going through this depression, was there some sort of treatment you got?
I never got any kind of formal professional treatment during high school. What I did have was music. So I started...
Which is healing in itself.
It is. It's amazing. I started taking vocal and piano lessons. I had the opportunity to do that at a local community college. So I graduated high school when I was 17, and I started there full time, and music was basically my medication. Music and the whole performing arts department there at the college was my community.
A lot of artistic people suffer from depression, as we know. So that helped, but then you had, I think when you were 19, you had another episode, something?
Yeah. So what happened was I finished my AA, and then I moved
Associate's degree, right?
Associate of Arts, yeah. And then I moved out of my parents' house, and I decided to take a gap year because I didn't really have a sense of direction. And unfortunately, a lot of the structure that I'd had in my life up to that point just was kind of gone.
The structure of home and the structure of your high school or your college.
And then there was the pressure of living alone for the first time ever. So, it was a big change. And what happened was I started getting panic attacks pretty much every day. And they would get really severe. I actually passed out from one several times. And then I was also very depressed at the time. And it just kind of got worse over time. So...
It got pretty bad, actually, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did.
So bad, I think, that you actually ended up in the hospital very briefly, right?
I did, yeah.
And what led to that?
Well, basically, so towards the end of that summer after I graduated, I decided to get professional help. And the first counselor didn't work out because of an insurance problem. And after that, I kind of went downhill, and I actually became suicidal. And over the course of those several months at the end of the year, I attempted suicide twice. And it was at that point, after the second attempt, that I reached out to a few friends and I realized that I needed to be on some kind of medication because this cycle of depression and anxiety was just keeping me, I was just in its grip all the time and I couldn't function anymore. So I went to the county health practitioner and I started seeing a counselor there once about every month, and I also got on Prozac, a low dosage, and that was going well for a while, and unfortunately I did have a third suicide attempt that put me in the hospital where I OD'd on my meds, but it could have been much worse.
Right.
I mean, obviously I didn't succeed, and it was just a one-day stay in the hospital. So
That was probably your low point, I would think.
It was really a low point for me.
Right.
And it was after that I decided I needed to make some changes in my life and really take responsibility for this.
And all the more amazing because you're only 19 at the time, which is, pretty young age to take that type of responsibility, to know you need help and to do something proactive about it.
Yeah.
And one of the things you did is you left your home in the Southwest and you moved up to Portland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is when I met you.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a good move, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was good about it? How did that help you in terms of your recovery to get a fresh start in a new place?
Well, it gave me a sense of direction and adventure that I hadn't had in a long time. So I went from feeling hopeless and feeling like my life was going nowhere to feeling like, here I was in this new city with these opportunities. And then also meeting you and going to your group was a huge thing because it gave me community. And it gave me like-minded people that I could talk to every week about what I was going through. And yeah.
You said earlier that you thought the group, being in a support group, has been the most important thing that has helped you maintain your stability and your recovery right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just say for, again, the viewers, what is it about being in a group that is so helpful?
Sure. Well, basically, it's a basic human need to be vulnerable. And to be vulnerable with other people, especially when you're going through something difficult. And I don't think I'd really had that in my life before that. And the support group, it's just the perfect environment for that because everyone's got problems and everyone's just can be really honest about where they're at.
So it seems like the group has been a really important part of your recovery. But as we both know from working the program, that it takes a whole host of things, not just any one thing, to really maintain recovery. So what are some of the other tools you've been using, aside from the social connection in the group?
I've been using a few things. So one very important thing is exercise.
Of course.
I try to get outside a lot, and I have a dog. I take him for walks usually every day. Having the structure of school and a job to go to are really important. Yeah.
Absolutely necessary.
So necessary because, and there's definitely a lot of days where I feel really anxious and I don't want to show up for them, but I usually feel better when I do, and I'm always kind of glad when I can push through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, of course, the group and having friends in a community.
You also said eating well and learning to like yourself.
Eating well, and then, the final thing is, becoming my own cheerleader.
Right.
I never was that before, and I think one thing that your programs really helped me realize is that I need to be my biggest advocate and my biggest cheerleader, and it's really it's a really important thing. So I would say community, exercise and eating well, having a structure, and being your own fan.
Right. You are your own advocate.
Exactly.
You're your own recovery coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Stephen Covey said in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was actually his first habit. Be proactive, be your own coach, be in charge of he didn't use the word recovery, but your wellness.
Exactly.
Same idea.
Yeah, because only you are in control of that at the end of the day. Yeah.
So, I have found, and many of us have found, that depression can be a real teacher. So what is one thing you've learned? I know you probably learned many things, but what is one thing you'd like to share with the viewers that you've learned? I think you had a metaphor of depression was like a big...
Yes, like a big whale.
Big whale.
Yeah, so there's a proverb I really like, and it goes, how do you eat a whale? And the answer, of course, is one bite at a time.
No offense, vegans, but yeah.
No offense to the vegans.
Exactly, we're 2 of them. But anyway, yeah, so what does that mean, eating a whale one bite at a time?
I think it just means when you have a challenge that seems insurmountable, like, depression, my depression has been this huge whale in my life for 6 years now. You can tackle it. You just have to do it one step at a time. You just have to take the next step that's in front of you, and eventually you'll get to those last steps.
Right, break it down into manageable parts.
Yeah, exactly.
You've done that. Look at those steps you've taken. First, you got to a counselor, then you got to Prozac, then you moved here, then you got a job, then you enrolled in school, then you got an apartment. You did these things one step at a time, and now your life is not perfect because we know that there are ups and downs. Recovery is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event, but you're on the road, and especially because of your age, I just have to tell the viewers that, for Heather to have this much wisdom and this much together at the age of 20. I mean, I was 20. I didn't even know what was wrong with me. I didn't really start becoming aware of this till I was 47 in my fourth breakdown. So you've really, learned very quickly, and I'm glad. I'm sure you'll be able to help other people if you run into college your age who are going through this. I'm sure you'll have a lot of wisdom and help to impart to them.
I sure hope so.
And speaking of wisdom to impart, do you have any last thing you'd like to say to the viewers out there in terms of giving them some hope or some encouragement or any sort of single tip that could guide them on their journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's really important to cut yourself a lot of slack.
Mm-hmm.
So we're our own worst critics.
Absolutely.
And yeah, as depressives, we really are. And I think if you can learn to give yourself that grace when you mess up or when you have a bad day, it's so important because it's not a problem that's solved overnight. It doesn't just go away. You're going to be dealing with it for a long time, most likely.
Long time.
Yeah. So if you can learn to like yourself and to treat yourself well, I think that's a really important step. That's what I would say.
That's fantastic. And having the patience, the Buddha said our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. And that's what you've done, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even this week you've had a tough week, right? And yet you braved your struggle, came down here to the studio and did this interview, even though it's been a tough week.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really depressed this week.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also know it's going to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It will.
As it has before.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. This is Douglas Bloch. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I want to express my sincere thanks to Heather for coming here and sharing her story with us. Thank you, Heather.
You're more than welcome, Doug.
If you've enjoyed this video and want to see others like it, just you can subscribe to the channel. You can go to my website, Healing from Depression, or just click on the links during the closing credits. And until we meet again, Heather and I both wish you the best in your mental health recovery. Thank you.